Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am your host, Mike Hoffman. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Geraldine Anello. Geraldine, how are you doing today?
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. So Dr. Anello is a pianist, conductor, and music director who has contributed her skills to various Broadway productions, including Kinky Boots and School of Rock. Originally from France, as you can hear from the cool accent, and raised on Reunion Island. In addition to her Broadway contributions, Dr. Anello has a strong passion for education, working at institutions including Malloy, New York's University Steinhardt, and the Tisch School of the Arts, and Princeton University. Apart from her musical and educational roles, Dr. Anello also serves as a community consultant. She is a published poet with 3 books published as #1 in multiple categories, and has a new book, which we'll discuss later on, called The Pulse of the Magician. Keep him busy, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
So how does someone from France end up on Broadway?
Yeah, that's not the most obvious path.
Correct.
I'm actually not the only one. There is a guitarist on Broadway from France. So clearly the two of us did it. But both of us, because I guess I'll take both of us, went to school in the US for music. And then that kind of, was a good springboard for the rest. And then the second step is to get to New York. Because I first went to school in Michigan and then Boston. And this other musician went to Boston as well. And then, of course, you got to make it to New York to be on Broadway. There's not really a path around it. And it seems obvious, but I've met many musicians who actually say, think that if they say they're available for Broadway, then they can move for Broadway, but it doesn't really work that way. You have to be here locally and then work different music gigs and work your way up.
So as part of your Broadway role, were you did a variety of things. You conducted, you played in some. So how did that work from first being in the orchestra to eventually being a conductor?
Yeah, you kind of have to picture musical chairs in real life.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on Broadway, it's actually called having your own chair.
Yeah.
And people on Broadway have different chairs, and you have subs coming in all the time. And so people on Broadway are always working on many different things at different levels. So one day you're working under someone, and the next day they're working under you. And on this show, you're in this role, and this other show, you're this other role, a lot of times at the same time.
Wow.
So it's the anti-corporate career.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no path going up. I mean, a little bit, you have to prove yourself, but a lot of time it's outside Broadway, and you show what you're doing, and people trust you more and more.
So I mentioned Kinky Boots, and I mentioned School of Rock. How many shows altogether on Broadway have you done?
I worked on 14 in different capacity.
Wow.
Yeah.
All musically, though, in some musical capacity.
Always, yes. I am not an actor.
So give me, name some of the other ones as well. Some of the ones that we might know.
The Cher Show, American in Paris, Aladdin.
You want to sing the duet from Aladdin with me right now? I can. There you go.
It's Valentine's Day after all.
That's right.
Here we go.
A new exciting point of view. Yeah, see, not bad.
I don't know the rest of the words.
Yeah, me neither. It's okay. It's the only line I knew, so we're good.
I never know words.
That's right. You know.
I know melodies.
You know melodies. That's right.
Yeah, karaoke is really hard for me because I'm like, you're just showing me the words. What about the rhythm and the where I should sing?
Yeah, I played instruments back in the day, a long time ago in high school. So, and I was actually in what we called it the pit band for our theater shows every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what did you play?
I played trumpet growing up. Then in high school, I transitioned over to French horn.
Nice.
So in those pit bands, it was French horn. The 2 shows that I did were Bye Bye Birdie and The Pajama Game.
Nice.
Yeah.
They're cool shows.
So very much long time ago. So
you get my karaoke struggle of only having 1 out of 3 informations I need.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally get it. So in some of the situations, you're in front of the stage. And now what I'm seeing on some of these Broadway shows, now they have the band in all different locations, where in some situations, they're kind of above the stage, so they're
Yeah,
kind of part of the show, like Dear Evan Hansen. They were kind of visible,
they
and
were.
others they're nowhere. They're like kind of off stage. So, what do you enjoy in that situation? Like, have you been experienced the different things, or have you always in the traditional upfront pit?
Yeah, I really prefer like to be where you're meant to be.
Mhm.
Like you're really right in front of the stage in an actual pit where all your musicians are there and you can see the stage directly instead of
Mhm.
through a little, screen. It's easier that way. You have a better connection with them. They can see your face. They can,
Yeah.
end up having inside jokes. So that's ideal. But it makes sense for the different shows that do it
Mhm.
differently. It makes sense too for the, at the end we're all there with one goal, which is the show and what can we do so it's best version, and a lot of times it means you're in different spots.
So, what do you do to keep it fresh? Because I imagine in certain weeks you're doing 8 shows
Yeah,
a week, and you're doing the same thing over and over, as opposed to certain jobs is a level of variety every day what you're doing. And obviously, you love being a musician, but it is a job. So, how do you balance? Oh my God, I got to do this again, versus keeping it fresh and exciting every day.
yeah, it's kind of built in the excitement because on Broadway and in musical theater in general, when you're working a union show, which most of these are, Broadway is
Mhm.
always union, but even off Broadway, the musicians get to sub out 50% of the time. So a lot of time you have different musicians in the room, not
Mhm.
all, but even if you have one new musician or one different musician, even if that person has done it a few times already, that's exciting right there just because they play differently. So the
Mhm.
show sounds different. You maybe have to give them different things, different information, to cover maybe a mistake they did last time or whatever and
Mhm.
help them through that. And with the what's happening on stage, a lot of time you have swings. And
Yeah, of
so,
course.
somebody's sick that day, somebody else is coming in. So just those changes in and of themselves are so frequent that really keeps you on your toes a lot of the times. Besides that, a lot of time you just enjoy the music.
Mhm.
So, you can be dancing to it, you can be, just enjoying what's happening, enjoying the day. But when you do it every day, actually, you really notice so many different things all the time that it
Mhm.
just doesn't quite feel repetitive because you
Yeah.
notice it all the
So,
time.
give me a situation where the actors, you said people play jokes, have fun, and obviously there's stuff that us sitting in the crowd don't see for a few reasons. One, we're not there every day to see a difference from one show to the other,
Yeah.
and both musically and on the stage. So, think of a situation where you were a conductor, where anything on stage like totally catch you off guard, where you had to kind of readjust, or it's nothing, or it's a lot more subtle, where it really has no impact on you.
Something that caught me off guard the most is on Broadway, they have this thing that's called Broadway Cares, where
Sure.
the cast will do some kind of something to get people to donate money for good
Yeah, the
cause.
auctions after the show,
Yeah.
and yeah.
And so I was doing Kinky Boots that day, and Wayne Brady was on, and he's, brilliant. And so they had this thing at the end, which was kind of a rap, so he could get words from the audiences and then just turn them into, spoken word brilliance. And we had a little piece of music to go with it that was pre-written, all set, and it was like, when you get to this point, he's going to point to you, and then you go. And I'm
Mhm.
conducting that day. Now, he starts and he goes, okay, Geraldine, actually, I would like, we're going to show you guys that we're going to do this completely off the cuff, nothing planned. And I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm doing a bit for the audience. We know
Yeah.
that's fine.
Right.
And he goes, drummer, give me a beat. I'm like, that is not how it's supposed to be at all. I'm supposed to show when we start.
Yeah.
The drummer, who is a sub that day, of course, that would be too easy.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, and they're in a different room. So I was like, well, I can see them. Go do
Yeah.
what the man said. Starts a beat. And then I'm looking at Wayne Brady, like, no idea what's happening next. And he goes, okay, now my bass player, play something. So bass player, who's also a sub that day,
Yeah.
starts playing a cool thing. Now, I don't have perfect pitch at all. And
Mhm.
I have no idea what pitch this bass player just played.
Yeah.
I have
Sure.
no idea what's happening. And I'm not a jazz player. Like, I was trained classically. I do pop
Mhm.
rock. Like, I need music to know what's happening. And then when Brady's like, okay, Geraldine, you're next. Then you've got the whole audience. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know
Yeah.
what notes to play. So I just kind of was like, well, hopefully the bass player played some kind of the pitch that's of the music we were supposed to play. And I
Yeah.
kind of like did my best, but I got so white, like I lost all the blood. I was terrified. My heart rate went up like crazy. And then after that, when Brady was like, okay, everybody like can play the whole orchestra. And then I felt like I was saved by everyone.
Yeah.
Like nobody can hear me. And there's so many videos of this on YouTube, by the way, from every single angle.
Okay, I'm gonna be checking that out later.
And nothing like really bad happened like in the playing, like I was managed, but I don't know how. Like that to
Yeah.
this day remains one of the worst situations I could be in. It's a fun memory, but like I'm glad I survived.
Well, he's the king of improv with his, whose line is it anyway, and
Brilliant.
stuff like that. So,
And so wonderful to work with too.
yeah.
Like I did a lot of his rehearsal, just very nice. Have a thumbs up for Wayne Brady.
How
But
the
yeah,
thumbs up just happened? Did you see
I
that?
can do all these things.
No.
I can make it confetti.
Whoa. Without
I'm
touching
doing
anything?
Valentine's Day. I can give you a little heart.
Michelle, how come I can't do that? You got to work on that for my next podcast.
I
That's
can
pretty
do this with
cool.
balloons.
Oh my God, I'm liking it. Just keep throwing them at me. Keep me off guard. This is great.
Those are all I know. I think there's a few more, but those are
No,
my four.
is the same thing if I do it?
Try it. Try hold it, but you gotta hold it in long enough. No, you need to upgrade your Zoom.
No. For those of you listening and not watching, Geraldine is making hand gestures, and as she's doing that, things are popping up on her screen like thumbs up or hearts or confetti, and I'm doing it, and I just look stupid because I'm just making these gestures and absolutely nothing's happening.
It's very much like being a conductor. You move your hands and things happen.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, speaking of band, I want to tell you, senior year, my wife hates when I tell people this. I was the drum major of the marching band, so I was up there conducting.
Ooh, hell yeah.
So
Yeah, so you understand what conductors do. People are like, "What you?"
Oh yeah, I know, I get it. Yeah, absolutely, I'm with you. 3/4 switch to 4/4. I got it. I had to do it. I'm just throwing out terms just to sound impressive, and they're pretty good, right?
I was impressed.
Yeah, thank you. So what's it like working with kids? Because I know you mentioned School of Rock. So School of Rock is obviously, for those of you who haven't seen it, I've seen it a couple times. It's basically, most of it is set in a classroom. So you're dealing with a teacher and 8 or 9 kids who not only have to act, but also have to play, and they are playing instruments on stage. So you're not only conducting your band, I imagine you're kind of also conducting these kids who are also singing and acting.
Yes, my involvement with that was I was in the rehearsal room when they were learning the dancing and the staging. I did not teach them the music directly, so I can't speak to that. But being in that rehearsal room, I was mostly playing the piano, so they knew what to work on. But I was working with, in those rooms, you have the choreographer and the other director, stage director, assistant, that's the word, assistant stage director. And they were in there, and it's so many hours because you're not only teaching them what to do, but you're teaching them how to learn their swings. You're teaching them, here's a card, here's what you need to write down, here's how to be serious. Like, this is professional theater. You cannot be messing around. When we say the break is done, the break is done. You cannot be making a joke. Like, a lot of these things, they had to be told a lot. And same thing, I did that a lot for Matilda. And I just saw these teams be incredible. And Matilda was harder because they were younger children. Matilda, they were maybe 8. While at School of Rock, they were more like 10, 11. And there's such a big difference at that age. And
plus, you're not just dealing with swings, you're dealing with rotations, because they have labor laws and children labor laws that they can only do a certain number of shows a week. So with like Matilda, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there were like 3 or 4 Matildas.
So they would just train them all at the same time.
Right. But in terms of the show,
every summer. So they were there in the same room learning at the same time and see each other do it and having that bond with each other. So that was really helpful. But it's really, a lot of hours, a lot of repetition, a lot of patience. But it was incredible to see. They're so good, particularly with Matilda, where they had to learn the accent on top of it. Do everything with the accent and really carry the show on their shoulders. Because School of Rock, it was a lot of kids. They were kind of carrying the stage. Matilda was a whole other ballgame. It was a hard show. The dancing, nobody knew, but we spent hours in the rehearsal room working on like these 8 measures of dancing. And then you go see the show and it's in the background of somebody else singing, front. And you're like, nobody can notice, but that was hours of rehearsal to get them there.
And the amazing thing when you're dealing with like 4 kids, obviously they all want to stand out and be good. But at the same point in time, that you don't want them standing out to be so different than the others, because everyone else feeds off of them in the show, whether it's other actors, musicians, and so forth. So they need to be independent, but they need to be right on. The timing needs to be the same, and all this kind of stuff. So that's probably a challenge for them as well.
The process is so clearly defined that by the time they're on stage, there's not even a consideration them of what they need to be doing. They know exactly what they need to be doing. How a lot of it is focused, to be honest, to just stay in the character, to remember all the little details. There's so much to think about. You don't have the time to wonder. You don't have that big a margin to do your own thing in the moment at that point.
Yeah. yeah, I'm fascinated by that stuff. I mean, I've been going to shows with my parents when I was a kid. I mean, I could probably name 40 different shows, a lot of them with kids, a lot of them obviously without. To me, I'm definitely more of a musical kind of person than a, drama or things like that. To me, if I'm going to see a drama in person, I can watch something on TV. To me, when you're going to Broadway, at least in my opinion, you're going for the musicality and the dancing and the singing.
I agree.
So
I fall asleep in plays, and I don't mean
yeah,
to, and I don't want to, but I'm just they start speaking. See, that I was going to say singing. They
yeah.
start speaking when I'm expecting singing.
Well, just like when you watch a musical on TV, like they do these live things now, it's a little weird watching it on TV. To me,
Yeah.
it's almost kind of weird watching a play live because it's no different than me watching a courtroom drama on TV or a comedy or whatever it would be. I mean, now there are some, cases I've seen people, I've gone because of the star of the show and you wanted to see that person because of the name recognition. So
Yeah.
besides Wayne Brady, what I'll call celebrities have you worked with?
Brendan Urie
Mhm.
from Panic, he was incredible. Showed up in rehearsal. One of those who's never acted before, who shows up just extraordinarily well
Yeah.
prepared, very committed to the process.
Mhm.
In the beginning, he would apologize in the middle of a scene if he would forget a word, and that's such
Yeah.
a frequent part of the process in
Of
theater.
course.
No one's going to hold it against anyone that you
Yes.
forget words. Of course, you forget words. We are just starting rehearsals.
Yeah.
And so they had to be like, it's okay, like you're fine. That's not the expectation. He was incredible. He was incredible in that role.
Mhm.
Just seeing different people in the same role is always fascinating.
Yeah.
They always, bring something different. So that was exciting. It was also very different with him at the theater, because normally you would leave the theater and you'd have, maybe 20, 40 people waiting at stage door. But with him, he had his own bodyguard
Yeah.
that was at the stage door from before the show to the end. And that person would speak to people, and you'd have hundreds of people waiting. And it was a whole different ordeal.
So they weren't there for you, they were there for him?
I'm still wondering.
Yeah.
I think they were there for him.
Like, there's Geraldine there.
Not once did that happen.
No,
Not
not one. That's wrong. I remember this goes back 30 years, maybe even more, went to see How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And when I saw it, it was starring Matthew Broderick and Sarah Jessica Parker. So this goes, way back when. I don't even think they were married. I'm pretty sure they weren't married at the time. This is way back. And we're outside waiting for the show. We're just sitting, we're just sitting kind of like on the stoop. And it's like 20 minutes before the show. So we're not even talking like long before, maybe a half hour. And Matthew Broderick just pulls up on his bicycle with his bike helmet on, just pulls up, gets off his bike right in front of us. Hey, how you doing? And just walks in. Someone's waiting there, just takes his bike and he walks in. There was no security. There was nothing.
There's usually security inside.
Right. Well, that
on Broadway, you open the door and the first person is...
That does you a lot of good when you're driving up on the outside.
Yeah, no, you don't normally have someone on the outside.
Yeah. But no, it was just kind of funny how, you see now you see people come up, with people walking them in. He's literally driving up the streets in New York by himself. At that point, he was a pretty big name, he just Ferris Bueller and, all that kind of stuff. And
that's New York for you.
That's New York. Exactly right. He probably lived, 3 blocks away. Like, it's silly. A cab will take me longer. And I'm sure she was already there, in hair and makeup much, much earlier, and so forth. But yeah, so that was actually pretty funny. So you mentioned practical jokes before. So well, can you give me an example of something that someone did, during a show kind of thing to kind of...
Most of the time it's going to be either the actors are in the wings and they're just mouthing the words of the scene or of the song in the totally wrong way.
Yes.
So if it's a love song, they're just going to act like they're fighting with each other. If it's, like a very sweet song, they're going to act like it's the sexiest thing ever.
Yeah.
And we kind of have a version of that in the pit as well. Now I've heard, I have some of these stories in the book, but one that I really like was, which is less likable now, but at the time when they were doing Avenue Q, it was when Donald Trump was doing that show, The Apprentice.
Sure.
He was only known for that, but they had this thing of like, you're fired. And so they actually had a laminated poster that said, you're fired. And the last person in the band that did the big mistake of the night would get it. And they would and that's such a great way to keep you like focused and on your toes, because you don't want to be the person that gets it. But of course, everybody's going to get it at some point.
Right, at some point, sure.
So that was their way, which I thought was pretty fun.
So is that what the book's about? So tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's a bunch of different interviews of top players across different genres of music
Mhm.
and different instruments and different career paths. So you've got people who work in studios in Los Angeles and Nashville. You've got people playing for, the best of the best, like Jay-Z, Beyonce, NSYNC, just like the top. And then you've got military bands, classical orchestras, of course, Broadway. Like it just spans all the types of careers you could have. And it's all these interviews where you see what the day-to-day is like, what a career is like in that style. Are you touring all the time and playing stadiums, or are you being able to stay in New York City because you're playing at the Met,
Right.
like all these different things.
So what was the impetus for you writing this book? I mean, obviously your background wasn't anything, literary. So what took you here?
Yeah, this book is very much the answer to the questions I had. And the process of doing it was me looking for these answers. So when I graduated, I was like, okay, but what really can I do?
Yeah.
What are my options here?
Mhm.
When you're a musician, you always make money from the time you're 14 or 15, you're always in demand, but it was like, okay, what else is out there? What
Yeah,
else
of
can
course.
I do?
Yeah.
And I was coming from classical background and I knew I loved pop. So I was like, I wanted Broadway, but I also was like, could I do tours, or is being classically, trained actually a hindrance to that? Or do I totally have the level as a result?
Right.
I have no idea. And I would look online. I love research. And I could not find anything at all. There was no concrete information on all the different paths. And I was like, okay, then I guess I'm gonna go get them.
Yeah.
So I started calling people and emailing them. And I was like, will you speak to me? It's for a book. Because I was like, it doesn't exist, let me make it. And here it is.
There you go.
That's what started me.
So I apologize. Is the book out now or is it coming out?
Yes, it's fully out. It came out a week ago today.
Okay.
It's
That's
available
exciting.
paperback and hardcover and digital. Yeah,
That's
pretty excited.
exciting.
A little bit like my baby.
All right. So my autographed copy, I'm sure, is en route. That's great.
Yes.
To my best friend. That
Yeah.
would be awesome. So how can you get? Is it on Amazon or bookstores? Like
It's
how
on
is it?
Amazon. It is very much on Amazon. It's available in all countries, internationally. So yeah.
How do you go about promoting this? Because obviously, there's millions of books, and obviously, it's one thing if you're a Tom Clancy who comes out with a new book, everyone knows. So someone like you who wants to get the name out there, obviously, you're doing podcasts and things like that. But how are you?
Yes.
How are you or the people that help you with the book promoting it?
Yeah, I did a book launch last week, which was great. We had lots of people, took lots of photos,
That's
and a
fun.
lot of these people are musicians. And
Mhm.
so, I'm hoping that some of them are in the book, some of them are not, that they're going to pass it on to their students, to their
Sure.
colleagues, because it helps not only music students, but also professional musicians. If there's
Yeah.
something that makes you feel like less alone. And yeah, we're going to be actually contacting all the teachers of music business classes
That's smart.
and send them the book and see if they would find it helpful for their
Mhm.
students, which hopefully they would.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it could be that kind of book that's both entertaining,
Yes.
but also educational. And if you get both out of it,
Thank you.
you got a win-win. So those who aren't there to learn, but just to hear some good stories, great. And for those who have something to learn, or in that field, great for them as well.
That's the feedback I've been getting so far.
Good.
So
That's
I
awesome.
hope.
Now, before you ended up on Broadway, were you a fan of Broadway?
Yes and no in a weird way, because in France you don't have musical theater like you have it here. It's not part of school. You're not going to be in a school musical. It doesn't exist. But I found a book of Les Miserables of songs, and I knew the book itself. And so I was like, ooh, I really like this. Like, let me do something with it. Play the songs. Like, these are good songs. This was completely unknown to me. And so I actually, for some whatever reason, went to my high school principal and said, hey, can I gather my friends and can we have a space to rehearse and do a show
Oh, wow,
of
good for
this?
you.
Yeah, so I invented musical theater.
Wow, good for you.
So while I did not know Broadway, I clearly wanted to tell stories through music.
Yeah, good for you.
And then years later discovered it was a very famous show and then
Yeah.
got to meet the writers. But yeah, at the time I had no idea. And we did 2 shows of it.
Wow. So I'm sure now that you've been here, you see a lot of other shows that you're not part of, so talk to me about some of your favorite, I don't know the right word, I don't want to say soundtracks because the album, but I'll use the word soundtracks.
Yeah.
Some shows, whether you've been a part of them or not, that you think have the best total musical experience?
I mean, I was obsessed with Book of Mormon,
Okay.
Legally Blonde, and Hamilton.
Okay.
Those albums, I listened to so much, so much, so much.
I hear
Hamilton.
that a lot for obviously Hamilton and Book of Mormon. I've never really heard someone say it for Legally Blonde. So that's interesting.
I mean, it's an older show now.
Yeah, oh, of course. Yeah.
It's just an older show. But yeah, it's so good.
Interesting.
It's so good.
Yeah, that one you don't hear, but yeah, Book of Mormon's a classic. So some of those songs are just fantastic.
But I really try not to listen to shows anymore because actually with those, I listened to the album first and I listened to it so much that then I ended up being a little bit disappointed when I saw Legally Blonde on tour.
Yeah.
I already knew all the jokes.
Sure.
You already know a lot of the jokes, so all that's left is like, okay, there's the dancing and the lights, but
Well, there's two schools of thought with that. Some people like to know the score before they go because they want to be able to kind of not sing along, but hum along, whatever. There's always the excitement, kind of like going to a concert, which is different in the sense because you're singing out loud like everyone else, but you want to hear a song that you know, as opposed to hearing a song you've never heard before. So I get it from both perspectives. There's the excitement of hearing something new.
true.
But there's also the excitement of, oh, I love that. Oh, my favorite song's coming up. I love that song, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for me, once I know the music, I just I forget the rest. I
Okay,
forget
that's fair.
to focus on the rest. I focus. So then if I know it too well,
But
I
there
can't
are
think
certain
of it.
soundtracks. If you hear a soundtrack from beginning to end, you don't know the story.
Mhm.
Now, there's some the complete story.
That's true.
I mean, have you ever heard the soundtrack to, like, Annie back in the day? But
Yeah.
if you listen to that from beginning to end, you basically know that she starts as an orphan and she ends up, spoiler alert, everyone, she ends up adopted by the millionaire. But the songs take you through that.
Mhm.
Obviously, Hamilton, which there is no dialogue, takes you through that.
That's true.
But a lot of shows, the songs are so separated, or they're particular scene that you don't necessarily know how the story is going to end based upon the songs.
That's very true. So I'll reconsider that now.
See?
I'll
Give it a
see what
shot.
ones I want to. So which one would you recommend I listen to next?
From a soundtrack perspective, I think if you want to talk the last 10 years, I think Dear Evan Hansen
Yes.
is a fantastic. It just has some fantastic songs.
And I did watch it and I play it regularly, so that makes sense.
Yeah? Okay. So what do you think of those?
Yeah, because it's a big audition song that
Yeah.
made a lot of people are bringing it to auditions.
Which one? Which song? You Will Be Found, or the other one?
I forget that I'm not good at titles. The one he sings with that fast rhythm.
No, not that.
I'm the
I know
worst.
it's not You'll Be Found. It's the other one. Yeah.
Everyone would know too, like listening to
Yeah.
this. Like, of course, it's this one.
Yeah. If You're Falling in a Forest. Yeah, that one. Yeah. I forget the name of it. Yes. Yeah, but that to me,
Oh gosh,
I just think it's fun trying to watch you try and sing this right now. I'm enjoying this.
I haven't played in like a year. Falling through the window.
Oh, yeah, waving through the window. Yeah. Yeah.
There, my
There you
gosh.
go.
Woo!
Yeah. Now that's a perfect example when you talk about different actors and everything to take a new spin from it. When I saw Ben Platt, I'm like, there's no way the show will continue after him because there's no way anyone else could do this.
He was so good.
And then everyone else did it was great. So you think of certain roles and it's like it's this person and anyone else you can't even imagine. But then when you see the other people, you're like, you know what? They were able to pull it off, and they were good as well.
Actors are incredible. Actors are incredible. I mean, I work with actors all the time. They're just incredible.
Mhm.
What they can do all the time too.
Yeah. You make it. Yeah, they make it believe that you can actually believe that that's them. And I think the biggest testament to it is when you see someone, an actor that you've seen in other things. And they kind of been typecast a little bit, but then they can do something totally different and they can sell it. Like, now I'm getting off of Broadway, but when you see like an actor, like a great comedic actor, like a Carol Burnett,
Mhm.
are you familiar with Carol Burnett? I know
Of
you're
course.
okay. And then you see her go on Law and Order and play like a psychomaniac killer. Like something like that. It's amazing how you can't look at her without laughing because of all her shows and her sticks. And then you see her do that, like, wow, she's believable. Or Robin Williams, when he would obviously as crazy as they get, and then, comedic genius, and then you see him do something as a serious role and they pull it off. It's talent. And the same thing with musicians, like you said, someone who only plays jazz and then can, adapt their style, because it's not just, you're right, it's not just looking at sheet music. There's a level of interpretation and things like that I don't think everyone necessarily realizes.
Yeah, and I think when you're a musician, you think that over time you're going to get better and better and better. But what's interesting, and that I found out in the book, I looked at the site because it's here, but
Yeah.
one of them who plays the drummer for Avril Lavigne, and he's also a jazz player, and he talks about it coming out of tour with Avril Lavigne and playing this huge stadium where you have to really hit. So it's physically very demanding. There's a whole ramp up period to just get your body ready for that level of hitting.
Yeah.
Like then I come back to New York City, I'm out on tour and I get called for a jazz gig in a 30-seat place. I have to practice again to learn how to play with finesse.
Yeah.
Because I can't suddenly get off months of hitting so hard and be able to do that. And it's funny because here's the thumbs up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where'd that come from?
The thumb
Now I'm just telling you right now, if I get the middle finger from you popping up there, we're done. Because these random things are popping in my face here, so I'm getting nervous.
But I found it interesting because you just expect that your skills are just stacking up over time, but no, sometimes you just got to relearn it because it's at the end of the day, it's physical first.
Yeah.
It's physical first, and also just your ear too. You know, if your ear has been playing Avril Lavigne for a year, you're, you know, really strong with your 2 and 4 and your pop, and then suddenly you're playing jazz, your ear has to be different.
Yeah. So last question I have for it, a different angle, because obviously we're an accounting firm. This is a, you know, obviously a lot of people are business clients of ours listening and so forth. Is it difficult in your line of work knowing that, you know, some people have a job, but they basically could work there for 20, 30 years, and there's the level of security that I have a job, and as long as I keep doing my job, I'm secure, or they're their own business owner, things like that. Your contracts are however long they are, they're union type work. Do you constantly have that fear about what's next? Or do you oftentimes have what's next lined up before this thing ends?
I've definitely known Broadway musicians to actually, because every week you have a report of how much a show grossed and how much it cost. And I've seen people read that every week as like an anticipation of their, you know, their own employment. Part of the biggest issue people run into is ageism, to be honest. There's a lot of ageism in the music industry. It's worse, of course, if you're on stage.
Well, I was going to say, is it? Yeah.
Look, but it's true even when you're not on stage. Even for things, you know, you wouldn't think about, like wedding bands or just it kind of across the world. So it really does get, you know, depending on who you ask, it's different ages, but some people say they notice like it started getting a little bit worse at 40 and then others say at 50. But it's kind of tough when you see, you know, the best of the best who probably are at the best of their skill that are getting less gold for that reason. So that's really something I wish was more talked about. Everybody knows it, but there's no like current push to help sort that out.
Yeah. But I have seen conductors, I won't speak for musicians because obviously it's hard to see them, but I've seen conductors who look like they could be 30, and I've seen conductors who could be well into their 70s, you know, just from looking at them from afar. So it seems like luckily what you do, at least part of what you do, I don't want to say is ageism, you know, protected, but probably a little more protected. But you're right. If we're talking about pick any show, if you're talking about, right, obviously a kid role, well, clearly when you're above a certain age, or for the kids, you could be young, but if you're too tall, you know, or things like that. But if you're talking about a traditional show that has a love story, yeah, you're going to age out of those two lead characters if those lead characters are supposed to be, you know, early 20s and that kind of thing. But I guess that's the problem with show business in general.
Yeah, casting is different from
the real world.
Contracting, because from if the musicians are on stage, they fall under the casting rules, and if they're not on stage, they fall under contracting rules, and that's very different as far as employment law is concerned.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of specificities you can get into.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now? Are you currently with a production right now?
No, right now I'm taking a rest.
Okay, good. You got the book. That's exciting.
Yes, I'm teaching at Mulo University. I have some concerts coming up after that at 54 Below.
Nice.
Things like that. And that's good for now.
Good.
I enjoy that.
Hey, you're keeping yourself busy and you're happy, so that's great. So
indeed.
Listen, I really enjoyed talking to you. How can people follow you on like social media and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm at Geraldine Anello on Facebook, on Instagram, and then thepulseofthemusician.com.
And that's and they can find that book you said on Amazon right now. So just go to search The Pulse of the Musician and they can find it, or I'm sure they could type in your name, Geraldine Anello, Anello.
Yes.
That would have been cool if you made a gesture with your finger and like your name appeared, but you know, you didn't pay for that feature apparently, but that's still pretty cool.
That's the next one. They're working on it.
Awesome. But Geraldine, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I really enjoyed it. and I wish you nothing but success going forward.
Thanks so much, Mike, and vice versa.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.